Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Operation Northwoods. This is an operation that comes from the time of the Cold War, and it has to do with the tense relationship that was seen between the United States and Cuba at the time. Operation Northwoods, should it have gone forward, would have been a project that saw violence committed against US and Cuban civilians, with the blame placed on the Cuban government. Messed up, right? These acts would include fake attacks of high magnitude, the hijacking of planes, the sinking of boats, like some really serious stuff. Basically, they just wanted to harm themselves just to place the blame on Cuba, and they wanted to do this in order to justify an all-out war with Cuba, but thankfully some people at the time had decided that this likely wasn't the smartest or the best route to take, and the idea was scrapped. For a long time this was hidden from the public until years later documents were revealed that showed this very dark truth. In our number 9 spot today we have Operation Cottage. This operation was a tactical maneuver which completed the Aleutian Islands campaign in World War II, and it was a joint services assault on the island of Kiska. On August 15, 1943, Allied military forces landed on the island with the aim to eliminate the Imperial Japanese forces that had occupied the island since June 1942. Unbeknownst to the Allied forces, however, the Japanese forces had secretly abandoned the island 2 weeks earlier under the cover of thick fog using submarines and ships. So basically what I'm saying is that when the Allied forces landed here, they were unopposed. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that no one lost their lives. There were around 313 casualties, which were a result of stray Japanese landmines, vehicle accidents, and a series of friendly fire incidents. Most of the friendly fire incidents were between Canadian and American troops, as they mistook each other for Japanese forces as they came from opposite sides of the island. In our number 8 spot today we have rabbit telepathy. This is an experiment that was originally conducted after World War II but wasn't brought to light until many years later, well into the 2000s. Said to have been a part of, quote, Soviet and Czechoslovakian parapsychology research that was done from the end of World War II through to the Cold War era, this is one of the most grisly and truly unbelievable experiments that were conducted. Basically, they were trying to use rabbits to communicate with submarines, which is just already a bizarre kind of concept on a regular level, but of course the way in which they conducted this experiment was wrong and inhumane and truly just very cruel. Just a little heads up, if you're sensitive to animal stuff, I would maybe just skip over this one. You know, I wanna be safe, okay? So for the test, they would take a mother rabbit who had recently just had bunnies. They would keep the mother in a lab on shore, and then they would take the bunnies down with them in the submarine. Slowly, one by one, they would take the life of the bunnies, and each time they did, the mother rabbit's brain would produce a detectable and recordable reaction. Is this one of the worst things I've ever heard? Yes. What's even worse is that the report then goes on to say that other examples of, quote, animal telepathy research continued into the 1970s, and that it included other animals such as dogs, bears, birds, insects, and fish. I can't imagine they were, but let's just hope that these other tests weren't quite so cruel and inhumane. In our number 7 spot today we have Operation LAC. Operation LAC, which is short for Large Area Coverage, was a Cold War era project that involved the US Army Chemical Corps. Basically, it was a test that was designed to see whether or not it would be possible or feasible to taint a large area by dropping chemical agents from planes. To test this idea, they dropped, quote, a myriad of microscopic particles from planes covering an area that is said to span from the Rockies to the Atlantic, from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. So yes, definitely a large area indeed. In fact, it was so large that this is actually the largest test that the Chemical Corps had ever undertaken. According to the declassified documents relating to this operation, the tests, quote, did not provide the Corps with nearly as much data as the Corps would like. And then it goes on to say that, quote, to obtain additional data, the Corps planned further tests for the next fiscal year. Okay, well that's a little daunting. While not necessarily the same operation, also in the Cold War era was a similar test conducted that targeted a neighborhood in St. Louis, Missouri. This test saw the area being sprayed with zinc cadmium sulfide. At the time, those local to the area were being told that, quote, the government was testing a smoke screen that could shield St. Louis from aerial observation in case the Russians attacked. But of course, decades later, documents revealed that the tests were actually a part of a biological weapons program. And to make matters even worse, the zinc cadmium sulfide was linked to an increase in cancer among the residents of the neighborhood. In our number 6 spot today we have the embassy missions. This is a secret that was hidden not only from the American people, but also the people that were being spied on and listened to, but it wasn't revealed until 2007 happened when a document was leaked. This document is one that named 38 different embassies and missions that were so-called targets of US surveillance. The document didn't quite make it clear whether or not these targets were being looked into by only the NSA or if the CIA and FBI were also involved. The document described certain things like bugging fax machines with devices that allowed them to listen in on conversations, and the document also listed the names of different programs that are used within the embassies. The document showed that the embassies targeted weren't just those of countries who seemed to be enemies with the United States, and instead included places like India and Mexico, Greece, and Turkey. It appears as if the goal was to gain insider information into the diplomatic relations between the targets and the United States. The EU embassy in Washington, D.C. was one of the targets on this document, and this leak had the potential to have jeopardized one of the largest attempted free trade agreements in the world, because shortly after this all came out, negotiations were set to begin between the EU and the United States. The French president at the time made his anger about the situation very public and stated that all future negotiations will only be made under the agreement that the United States cease all unauthorized surveillance of any EU buildings or personnel. In our number 5 spot today, we have Operation Fast and Furious. No, this isn't another installment of the beloved franchise, although family is everything. This actually was a tactic that was used by the Arizona U.S. Attorney's Office and the Arizona Field Office of the United States Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, as they were conducting a series of sting operations from 2006 to 2011. Basically, the idea for this operation was to allow licensed firearm dealers to sell weapons to illegal buyers, hoping to track the firearms down later to Mexican drug cartel leaders so that they could then arrest them. So not only did this not lead to the results that they were hoping for, but it actually had terrible outcomes. Many of the firearms that were being tracked have been found at crime scenes on both sides of the United States-Mexico border, and one was even found at the scene where United States Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was killed. In our number 4 spot today, we have Operation Starfish Prime. This is an operation that took place in 1962, and it was a joint one between the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission and the Defense Atomic Support Agency. Basically, they detonated a thermonuclear device in the sky above the Pacific Ocean. They launched it from the Johnson Atoll using a Thor rocket, and once at an altitude of about 240 miles, they set it off, which ended up producing a yield of about 1.4 megatons. The electromagnetic pulse was so powerful and widespread that it disabled not only most of the equipment that was set up to measure it, but it also took out streetlights and caused telephone outages in Hawaii, nearly 900 miles away. The electrons released caused an aura that could be seen over most of the Pacific Ocean, and according to the documents, the quote visible phenomena due to the burst were widespread and quite intense, and apparently it was visible for days. In the end, it is said that the researchers weren't expecting such a powerful blast of electromagnetic pulse, and they were also anticipating that the electrons from the blast would get stuck in the Earth's own magnetic field for months, possibly even years, but alas, they did. This went on to create a radiation belt around the planet that eventually went on to disable at least 6 satellites, which included the world's first commercial satellite, only a few months after it was launched. The government didn't even tell AT&T what had happened until 2005. In our number 3 spot today, we have Acoustic Kitty. Apparently, in 1967, the CIA was spending millions of dollars trying to make cats into spies. I don't know why they chose the one animal that does not care what you want it to do, but they did, and Project Acoustic Kitty was born. The project basically involved implanting electronic spy equipment into real living cats who would then be trained to basically eavesdrop on unsuspecting people. This Cold War era plan was intended to be used on those in the Soviet Union. The project had a whole slew of issues, of course, because cats can get hungry and distracted, and unfortunately the first time this plan was being tested, there was a catastrophic outcome. The project, of course, was cancelled, and the researchers said that they believed they could train cats to move short distances, but that, quote, the environmental and security factors in using this technique in a real foreign situation forces us to conclude that for our intelligence purposes, it would not be practical. In our number 2 spot today, we have the cat drop. Not really sure why the government is obsessed with cats, but here we go. Apparently, the United States Office of Strategic Services, once upon a time, decided that the very best and most sensical way to ensure that bombs that had been dropped reached their intended naval targets was to strap them to cats and then drop them from planes. I know, it's Absolutely horrific. Definitely not my plan. They thought up this strange project because for some reason they thought that the cats would just be able to avoid the water and instead direct themselves to the target. Strange in theory, catastrophic in reality. There of course is no way to prevent these animals from fainting midair, and if you were dropped from a plane suddenly with no parachute and a bomb strapped to you, you'd probably also faint, because what in the actual hell? Definitely one for the history books. We can all be thankful that this is not something that carried on for long. In our number 1 spot today we have Unit 731. The Imperial Japanese Army's Unit 731 conducted some pretty horrifying experiments during World War II that certainly are shocking to anyone who learns about them. The experiments were meant to be done as a way to prepare for biological warfare, but the process was gruesome and extremely inhumane. Different medical schools and universities provided doctors and other research staff to help conduct these experiments, and they used both prisoners and civilians as the guinea pigs for them. There were a bunch of different experiments that were conducted during this time, some of which involved injecting them with pathogens such as plague or cholera or anthrax. Others involved vivisection or operations with no anesthesia, putting them in a pressure chamber to see how much a human can withstand before bursting, or live weapons testing. It is hard to even believe that this was a real thing that happened, and we honestly can't even begin to imagine what those people were forced to face during that time. After World War II, however, the United States gave immunity to Shiro Ishii, who is the Japanese Army medical officer responsible for lethal human experimentation and biological warfare projects. Many of these experiments he conducted just to see what would happen. Why not? American scientists decided that this information would be valuable, so they decided to give him immunity in exchange for the information on chemical and biological warfare. Shiro was never tried for his crimes.
Okay, starting off at number 10 now, we have WebDriver Torso. In 2013, a YouTube channel was created called WebDriver Torso. All it did was upload videos like this. Reddit users jumped on it. Theories range from the ridiculous, such as aliens, to the intriguing, such as spy communication. Eventually, a number of Reddit users came up with the answer to this whole mystery, including a blogger who made the most detailed description of it. It turns out that YouTube itself had set up the channel to test the quality of their videos. The actual content of the video is meaningless, hence the random sounds and visuals, but by comparing that video with the original file, YouTube can see how good their uploading system is for video quality. Google later confirmed that this was the case. Shame it's not aliens or spies though. Next up at number 9 now, we have the post-it notes. In 2015, Reddit user rbradbury1920 posted to Reddit saying that he kept finding post-it notes in his apartment reminding him to do errands that he had told nobody else about. He was seriously freaked out but found no signs of a break-in. It kept happening though, so he asked Reddit to help him solve it. Reddit user Kakalak made the suggestion that perhaps he was the one leaving the notes and just not remembering. He suggested it could be mental health, but also it could be a carbon monoxide leak. This odorless gas can have serious effects on people's brains and will cause death if levels are high enough. He replied by saying that he was having pretty bad headaches and that he'd set up his carbon monoxide detector right away. It was a good job he did that, because that was the problem. The level had reached a dangerous 100 ppm, causing him to black out and forget that he wrote the post-it notes. Mystery solved, but even more importantly I think, a life saved. Coming at number 8 now, we have the nail through the wood. One day a Reddit user posted this image to Reddit. That's a nail going through a piece of wood, but how did it get there? As you can see, there is no hole on the piece on the left. How did the nail end up going through the other pieces? The user who posted it said he found it on a hiking trip. He said there was no visual trickery involved and the wood was just one solid block, no glue. Reddit was stumped. Nobody could figure out how it was achieved. And then, on November 21st, 2009, woodworker Steve Ramsey uploaded a video to show the solution. He made the block, soaked the end piece in boiling water, and then used a clamp to push it down enough so that he could nail a hole into the next block. Then he simply soaked it again to make it take its original form. Incredibly simple and very impressive work by him. The video is currently sitting at over 20 million views. Alright, this next one is really freaky and I would hate it if it happened to me. Moving on to number 7 now, we have the SIM card. In 2013, Reddit user ShadyBusiness15 posted pictures to Reddit showing his extension cord which had blown a fuse. Now when he took it apart, he found a SIM card with a serial number on it. What? Yeah, I would freak out too. Reddit users realized there was actually a microphone attached to the device. He was being bugged. Every time someone rang that SIM card's number, it was then listening to the whole room. He called the number on the SIM card and an automated message said, "The service is now closed. If you have voicemail, you can turn it on." He then called O2, the SIM card's manufacturer, who told him that he'd need a warrant to find out who owned that number. Well, the mystery was solved of what exactly the device was. Now they just need to figure out who put it there. Next up at number 6 now, we have Hit and Run. In 2013, Reddit user Meathead posted an image of a broken tail light from a car that had been involved in a hit and run. He wanted to identify who the driver was. Not much to go on, really, with just a tiny bit of a tail light. 400 Reddit comments poured in and eventually they identified the tail light belonged to a grey 1991 Cadillac Brougham. He went to the police with that information and they were able to match it to a stolen vehicle. With this lead, they found the hit and run driver and then laid charges on him, or her. I don't know. Maybe Reddit can figure out the gender from the tail light too. Alright, at number 5 now, we have the cipher. In 2012, a Reddit user posted saying that a homeless man had given him $50 with markings on it and a note covered in some sort of strange code. Redditors quickly identified it as a bifid cipher, a message scrambled using a square grid system. They decoded it to read, "There's plenty more money to make, figure this out, and prepare to meet." Very spooky and cryptic. It also gave the address of a hot dog stand and told him to go there and ask for Mr. Input. And then he got another message threatening him because he tried to get Reddit to help him. Soon after, the original poster deleted his initial post after claiming he was now getting death threats and his family were too. The Reddit hunt continued though, and the theories for this now range from recruitment for the Department of Defense to some sort of elaborate marketing campaign for a local spy museum. Some people say this is solved, while others say that's exactly what Mr. Input wants you to think. Next up at number 4 now, we have the Strongsville Jane Doe. In 1975, 3 boys found a skeleton by a river in Ohio. It was identified as belonging to an 18 to 25-year-old woman who had been shot in the head some 5 months before her discovery. Detectives hit a dead end on identifying who she was, and it just became another cold case. Fast forward to 2015, where Reddit user Call Me Ice decided to do some digging on the case herself. She managed to obtain the original autopsy report, including a photo of the woman's skull. She then enlisted the help of a forensic scientist to create this facial reconstruction. A while later, they found this image of a 17-year-old Linda Pagano who went missing in September 1974 after an argument with her stepfather. They contacted the medical examiner's office, who say they were already working on that exact match. Shortly after, Linda's sister confirmed that the skeleton did belong to Linda. The Reddit community praised user Call Me Ice for her incredible initiative and detective work. Moving on to number 3 now, we have Stonehenge. In 2011, Reddit users noticed that someone had created a strange subreddit with a long string of numbers and letters and was just dumping weird code into it. Thousands of Redditors tried to figure out what this code all meant. Eventually, one Reddit user called Fraglet decided to put his programming skills to good use. He decoded one of the posts to reveal it was actually a picture of Stonehenge drawn in ASC2 art. Other posts were decoded to read things like Happy New Year 2001 and also what looked like coordinates in North Korea. Eventually, the whole subreddit was just closed. Most of the code was never even decoded. On the one hand, it was a victory to even uncode just some of it, but many users still want to figure out what the whole thing was about. Coming in at number 2 now, we have Grateful Doe. In 1995, a hitchhiker was killed in a car accident in Virginia. Because of his injuries, police were unable to identify who he was. They found a note on his body referring to him as Jason from 2 women called Caroline T and Caroline O. The police were completely lost on this one. Almost 20 years went by and nobody had solved the mystery. Then, in 2014, Reddit user Zombie Gray, real name Layla Betts, began to research the cold case herself. A whole community sprung up on Reddit to help her. She posted digitally recreated pictures of the hitchhiker. Then she was contacted by a man who said the images looked a lot like his roommate Jason Callahan, who he hadn't seen since 1995. That's when they realized they were onto something. Incredibly, Jason's mother saw these pictures online at the same time. They were able to contact the Virginia Medical Examiner's Office to do a DNA comparison between the hitchhiker and Jason's mother. Sure enough, it was a match. Layla Betts, with the help of the larger Reddit community, had solved a 20-year-old cold case and brought closure to Jason's family. And finally at number 1 now, we have the box of crazy. In 2013, Reddit user TramStopDan posted images of a box that he found in the trash. What he found inside was this weird collection of posters, illustrations, maps, and personal belongings. Some of the text and pictures made references to alien invasions and trains with animal faces. The pages were so intricately detailed. This was obviously done by someone who took the work very seriously. Eventually, Reddit's investigation led them to a man named Daniel Christensen, a Danish immigrant to the US who has since died. They found out that Daniel had become obsessed with the book of Ezekiel from the Bible. Couple that with his apparent schizophrenia, and the book appears to be his belief in the Bible as proof of aliens visiting Earth. The case was then closed as solved. However, for the people who said this was a government cover-up the whole time, this only added fuel to the fire. What do you guys think of this one?
Starting off this countdown, we have the spies. Tons of people are afraid that the government is spying on them. It's thought that they can tap into our phones and watch us and listen to our calls, even though I don't know why they would want to. Like, what are they gonna see me scrolling through like Instagram all day? It's not a pretty sight. Now, we can't really prove that they do, but recently a post on Reddit revealed that they are tracking us. So I don't know if this is a thing outside of Canada, but it is in Canada. So Apple and Android phones now have a COVID-19 sensor on them. Basically, this allows the government to track your every move. A couple of weeks ago, a lot of cell phone users were having phone disruptions, and that's apparently when the tracker was put on the phones. In secret. But it's not on all phones. Once you update your phone, then it's automatically turned on. Don't believe me? Well, the post says that for iPhone users, go to Settings, Privacy, Health, and then you'll see it, but it's not yet functional. For Android users, go to Settings, then Google Settings, and it should be there. This is said to be able to notify you if you've been near someone that has the virus. But it's also a way for the government to track your every move. Seriously, why would they have this feature and then just like not tell us about it? Why is everything done in secrecy? They're up to something. Moving on at number 9, we have Nixon's health. Now, this isn't really classified information, but I thought it was quite interesting, and it was brought to my attention by Kelly, Roy on Reddit. So the files of Richard Nixon's longtime physician, Dr. Walter Tkach, probably said that last name wrong, are on lockdown. The doctor's son has the files and is planning to eventually release them to the Nixon library, but when he does, they will not be open for 75 years. Not only that, but taped conversations between Nixon and his doctor are also on lockdown, and they will not be released. Now, why is this significant? Well, some people believe that Nixon was incapacitated towards the end of his presidency. If so, then under the 25th Amendment, he should have had his authority suspended. So there's a reason why the government has been keeping these files classified. It's going to apparently expose a lot. In our 8th spot, we have the trade documents. Back in 2019, the Reddit account OsterMaxNN leaked a bunch of UK government trade documents. The documents discussed future trade deals between the US and the UK. They also revealed plans by the Conservative Party to privatize National Health Service. After investigation, it turns out that the Reddit user that leaked the documents was part of a larger coordinated effort from Russia. Reddit said, and I quote, "We investigated this account and the accounts connected to it. And today we believe this was part of a campaign that has been reported as originating from Russia." In our 7th spot, we have Area 51. Everyone wants to know what really goes on in Area 51. Is it really where they're keeping aliens? I need to know. But sadly, we don't truly know. But we do have some insider information on what it's like in Area 51. Yeah, you heard me. 8 years ago, a Reddit user by the name of Kiver16 revealed that his mother's boyfriend is Stephen Gorvan, aka one of the people who was at Area 51 testing the Mars rover. He uploaded a picture of Stephen holding a sign saying, "Hi Reddit, ask me anything," as proof that it actually was him and he wasn't just gonna make it up. So people quickly jumped to it, asking him tons of questions on the mysterious base. During one part of the Q&A, Stephen revealed that when he first arrived at the base, he saw a strange aircraft flying low across the desert floor. He believed that it was a test flight for a secret aircraft. He said it moved at subsonic speed and didn't make a lot of noise. He also revealed that Area 51 is much bigger than it looks, with tons of different sectors and buildings. Now sadly, he didn't see any aliens. But he did reveal that it seemed like we are close to hoverboard technology, like the ones you see in Back to the Future, so that's pretty cool. Moving on to number 6, we have D.B. Cooper. One of the most famous and mysterious cases of all times, and I might have found out what happened to him. But first, let me give a rundown on this dude for the people who have no clue what I'm talking about. Dan Cooper, or D.B. Cooper, is a man who was responsible for a plane hijacking in 1971. No one knows who he is or where he is now. So in 1971, Cooper boarded the plane, and once in the air, he handed the flight attendant a note saying that he had a bomb in his suitcase. He demanded $200,000 and a parachute, but he didn't want any hostages. So they landed in Seattle, he got his request, and then he told the pilot to fly to Mexico City. However, along the way, he took the money and his parachute and jumped out of the plane. The police looked for Cooper until 2016, and this case is known as one of the longest active searches in history. Now, 2 years ago, a former FBI special agent joined Reddit and did a AMA, Ask Me Anything. To prove it was really him, he held a piece of paper like the other dude, saying his name and his Reddit, blah blah blah. The man is Mark Ruskin, who worked 20 years in undercover operations. One of the questions that someone asked him was about D.B. Cooper, and what the FBI thought happened to him and what he thought happened to him. Ready for this? Both the FBI and Mark believe that D.B. Cooper did not survive the parachute down. I know, so anticlimactic, but apparently they have evidence to suggest he didn't make it. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cat bomb. So this secret isn't really a secret anymore. I guess most of these aren't secrets anymore, but I didn't know this was a thing until I read about it on Reddit, meaning that I bet some of you haven't heard about it either. So during World War II, the government thought it would be a good idea to strap a cat to a bomb. They thought that by doing so, it would assure the bombs would reach their target. Cats hate water, so they thought if you drop a cat strapped to a bomb over water, the cat would avoid the water and then would just land on the battleship's deck. But obviously, for many reasons, that did not work out. Cats would end up passing out midair before sinking without a trace. They also tried something similar with bats, which again, didn't really work. Moving on to number 4, we have the bomb shelter. This is going to come to a shock to anyone who lives outside of the US. Posted on Reddit by the user Deadpool8988, they said that at one point, the US government was telling people to build a bomb shelter in their backyards. They instructed people to dig a big enough hole in their backyard and then cover it with a door. They were told to hide out there in case of a nuclear attack. But turns out that the real reason why they were telling families to do this was so that if there was a nuclear attack, the government wouldn't have to bury as many bodies. So families were literally digging their own graves. That is extremely disturbing. In our 3rd spot, we have the blood supply. Okay, this one is going to be pretty crazy. So back in 1984, the Red Cross Society in Canada was importing blood products from the US. This was at the time of the AIDS crisis, and America was hit much harder with it. There was fear that the disease was going to be transmitted through this blood. But the Red Cross ignored it, and according to this Reddit user who was a lab worker for the American Red Cross, apparently they were aware of this and so was the US government. But they didn't warn Canadians. Instead, they told them they had nothing to worry about and that they tested the blood before sending it. The guy was forced to keep his mouth shut and lie. As a result, tons of hemophiliacs who had blood transfusions later died of AIDS. What's freaky is that the Reddit user that shared this information later deleted his account. I just hope that he's safe and that the government didn't come for him for exposing them. In our second spot, we have the leaked emails. In March 2016, the personal Gmail account of John Podesta, a former White House chief of staff and chair of Hillary Clinton's 2016 US presidential campaign, was hacked, and his emails revealed some very disturbing things. So the emails were posted to Reddit along with other websites, and then users started to decipher them. They believe that Hillary and other people of power are part of a human king and a sex ring. In the emails, they use code words like pizza, cheese pizza, and hot dogs. Kinda weird, and it would say things like, and I quote, "I'm dreaming about your hot dog stand in Hawaii." Clearly, there's a hidden message to that. I can't dive into too much detail about it for obvious reasons, but you should do some research of your own. It's crazy. What makes this more suspicious is that the government removed all posts about this from Reddit, Facebook, Twitter, and other social media sites. Any posts about the emails and the theories will be removed. And in our number one spot, we have the blue van. Okay, this one thoroughly creeps me out. Like, it just proves that the government is up to no good. So this story was posted on Reddit by a former homicide detective. One time he was called to a scene where the victim had called 911 saying that someone was trying to kill him. He told police that he was hiding in his panic room. When they arrived at his house, there were no signs of forced entry, and all the doors remained locked from the inside. Inside the house, there was no damage, it was just super clean, no signs of violence or anything. Due to this, the detective believed that the attacker was someone that the man knew and invited inside. When they eventually got to the panic room, they found the man sitting on the floor. His face had a terrified expression plastered on it. Both of his arms were missing, not cut off. They looked as if they had been ripped off. His missing limbs were never found. Now, here's where it gets spooky. As soon as they reported their findings, the police captain told the team to give all of the evidence, along with the victim's body, to the individuals in a blue van that had arrived on the scene. The blue van belonged to the government. After they did this, the case was buried. They never heard any more information on it. Like, what? Seems like some government creature got released and killed this guy or something like that, and then they're trying to cover it up.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Project Plowshare. This is a project that aimed at finding a way to use nuclear explosives, but in like a friendly way. They wanted to use them for construction purposes. The program was organized in 1957, and as part of it, there were 31 nuclear warheads that were detonated in 27 separate tests. There were some more successful parts of the project, like rock blasting obviously, but there were also some scientific realizations that happened as a part of this. For example, through one of the tests, it led geologists to be able to determine that the Barringer crater was created as a result of a meteor impact, not a volcanic eruption like was previously thought. We started with the positives though, good news first, now we're on to the bad news. Of course, firstly, the public was like, WTF? This ultimately led to the termination of the project in 1977, but not before there was the realization and deposition that fallout from the radioactive material had been injected into the atmosphere. After this, underground testing became mandated. In our number 9 spot today, we have Voice to Skull. This point is about a tactic that was once used by the military, and it involves the wireless transmission of audible voices into the heads of humans. What this means is that it can make you hear voices that are not there. It all has to do with the microwave auditory effect. An example of a real world use of this is said to be an interrogation where normal tactics were not working. What did, however, was when this person was quote unquote visited by their god, quote unquote spoke to him, and told him that cooperation would make things easier on those he cared about. While being able to withstand some pretty frightening punishment techniques, it was this voice-to-skull tactic, also referred to as the voice of God weapon for obvious reasons, but it was this that worked and got him to cooperate with the authorities. In our number 8 spot today we have Operation LAC. Operation LAC, which is short for Large Area Coverage, was a Cold War era project that involved the US Army Chemical Corps. Basically, it was a test that was designed to see whether or not it would be possible or feasible to taint a large area by dropping chemical agents from planes. To test this idea, they dropped, quote, a myriad of microscopic particles from planes covering an area that is said to span from the Rockies to the Atlantic, from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. So, yeah. Definitely a large area. In fact, it was so large that this is actually the largest test that the Chemical Corps had ever undertaken. According to the declassified documents relating to this operation, the tests, quote, did not provide the Corps with nearly as much data as the Corps would like. And then it goes on to say, quote, to obtain additional data, the Corps planned further tests for the next fiscal year. Okay, well, that's a little daunting. While not necessarily the same operation, also in the Cold War era was a similar test conducted that targeted a neighborhood in St. Louis, Missouri. This test saw the area being sprayed with zinc cadmium sulfide. At the time, those local to the area were being told that, quote, the government was testing a smoke screen that could shield St. Louis from aerial observation in case the Russians attacked. But of course, decades later, documents revealed that the tests were actually a part of a biological weapons program. And to make matters even worse, the zinc cadmium sulfide was linked to an increase in cancer among the residents of the neighborhood. In our number 7 spot today, we have Operation Fast and Furious. No, this is not another installment of the beloved franchise. This was actually a tactic that was used by the Arizona U.S. Attorney's Office and the Arizona Field Office of the United States Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or the ATF, and they were conducting a series of sting operations from 2006 to 2011. Basically, the idea for this operation was to allow licensed firearm dealers to sell weapons to illegal buyers, hoping to track the firearms down later to Mexican cartel leaders so that they could then arrest them. So not only did this not really lead to the results that they were hoping for, but it actually had terrible outcomes. Many of the firearms that were being tracked have been found at crime scenes on both sides of the United States-Mexico border, and one was even found at the scene where United States Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was killed. In our number 6 spot today, we have Cat Drop. Apparently, the United States Office of Strategic Services, once upon a time, decided that the very best and most sensible way to ensure that bombs that had been dropped reached their intended naval targets was to strap them to cats and then drop them from planes. I know, it's absolutely horrific. Definitely not a plan that I came up with. They thought of this strange project because for some reason they thought that cats would just be able to avoid the water and instead direct themselves to the target. Strange in theory, catastrophic in reality. I guess that sounded like a pun. It was not a pun. No pun intended there. There of course is no way to prevent these animals from fainting midair, and if you were dropped from a plane suddenly with no parachute and a bomb strapped to you, you'd probably also faint, because what in the actual hell? Definitely one for the history books. We can all be thankful that this is not something that carried on for long. In our number 5 spot today, we have Operation Popeye. This is a program that was aimed at trying to control or modify the weather. It was a military cloud seeding operation that was carried out by the United States Air Force during the Vietnam War between 1967 and 1972. Basically, they wanted to figure out a way to use the weather to their advantage, and they wanted to try and extend monsoon season over certain areas of Vietnam so as to sort of disrupt the Vietnamese military. This would make it harder for supplies to be delivered, it would cause landslides, it would just definitely be a hindrance. Starting on March 20th, 1967 and continuing through every rainy season, this cloud seeding operation went on for years until all rain-making operations ceased on July 5th, 1972. This was of course a mostly classified mission for quite a while, and it took a while for the public to really be aware of what exactly was going on. But it likely isn't a coincidence that the operation stopped just 2 days after there was a publication about it in the New York Times. This led for there to be demands for laws to be passed about this kind of weather modification because it was quite an unprecedented tactic at the time. In our number 4 spot today, we have Operation Cottage. This operation was a tactical maneuver which completed the Aleutian Islands campaign in World War II, and it was a joint service assault on the island of Kiska. On August 15th, 1943, 1943, Allied military forces landed on the island with the aim to eliminate the Imperial Japanese forces that had occupied the island since June of 1942. Unbeknownst to the Allied forces, however, the Japanese forces had secretly abandoned the island 2 weeks earlier under the cover of thick fog using submarines and ships. So basically what I'm saying is that when the Allied forces landed here, they were unopposed. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that no one lost their lives. There were around 313 casualties, which were a result of stray Japanese landmines, vehicle accidents, and a series of friendly fire incidents. Most of the friendly fire incidents were between Canadian and American troops as they mistook each other for Japanese forces as they came from opposite sides of the island. In our number 3 spot today, we have Operation Tiger. This operation was actually one in a series of large rehearsals for the D-Day invasion of Normandy, which took place in April of 1944. This project went horrifically awry, however, as coordination and communication problems led to there again being friendly fire. This led to an Allied convoy, which was positioning itself for landing, being attacked by E-boats from the Kriegsmarine, which resulted in 749 American servicemen deaths. The terrible happenings don't end here though, because like I mentioned, this was a part of D-Day and the invasion. This was incredibly secret, so no one reported on it at all, meaning the family members of those killed had no idea. After D-Day, it is said that even then, this was an event that was still quite minimally reported on. In our number 2 spot today, we have Acoustic Kitty. Apparently, in 1967, the CIA was spending millions of dollars trying to make cats into spies. I don't know why they chose the one animal that does not care what you want it to do, and I also don't know what their obsession with cats is, but alas, they did, and Project Acoustic Kitty was born. The project basically involved implanting electronic spy equipment into real living cats who would then be trained to basically eavesdrop on unsuspecting people. This Cold War era plan was intended to be used on those in the Soviet Union. The project had a whole slew of issues, of course, because cats get hungry and distracted, and unfortunately the first time this was being tested there was a catastrophic outcome. The project was of course cancelled, and the researchers said that they believed they could train cats to move short distances, but that, quote, the environmental and security factors in using this technique in a real foreign situation force us to conclude that for our intelligence purposes, it would not be practical. Probably could have told them that before they even tried. In our number 1 spot today, we have Operation Northwoods. This is an operation that comes from the time of the Cold War, and it has to do with the tense relationship that was seen between the United States and Cuba at the time. Operation Northwoods, should it have gone forward, would have been a project that saw violence committed against US and Cuban civilians, with the blame being placed on the Cuban government. Pretty messed up, right? These acts would include faked attacks of a high magnitude, the hijacking of planes, the sinking of boats, some really serious stuff. Basically, they wanted to harm themselves just to place the blame on Cuba, and they wanted to do this in order to justify an all-out war with Cuba. But thankfully, some people at the time had decided that this likely wasn't the smartest or best route to take, and the idea was scrapped. For a long time, this was hidden from the public until years later documents were revealed that showed this very dark truth.
In our number 10 spot, we have the renovated floor. In one of the Reddit threads, a guy explained how once, when he was younger, he and his friend were at Portland University, and the specific building they were in had only a few floors. At the time, the building was undergoing some new changes. The walls were newly painted, new rugs, and some of the floors were still undergoing these changes. They had a meeting on the 3rd floor, so they got into the elevator and went to the 3rd floor. They were not prepared for what they saw though. The entire floor was so dark, the door to their meeting room was locked, and there were no people in sight. They looked out the window to outside, and there was nobody around. It was completely deserted, even though 5 minutes prior, it was busy outside. They looked at the stairs, and everything was old, perhaps straight out of the 70s, and nothing had been renovated, unlike what they had previously seen, 5 minutes ago. They went back into the elevator to the 2nd floor, where there was so much hustle and bustle, and their teacher confirmed that their meeting was indeed on the 3rd floor. They decided to take the stairs, which again, they saw were actually renovated, and when they got to the 3rd floor, everything was the same except the floor had been renovated and there were tons of people. The boys are still convinced that they jumped through time, and I'm with them. it definitely seems that way. In our number 9 spot, we have The Show. There is a thread where a woman's son explains an experience that she had that she can't explain. She takes the train to work every day, and every day she sees a man that almost misses the train. One day he's running for the train and gets on in the last second and shoves her quite forcefully. The woman is shocked by this and gives him a dirty look as he never apologized. The man next to her asked her if she was alright. She said, yeah, and proceeded to turn around to find the man to give him a piece of her mind. But he wasn't there. He wasn't anywhere in sight. She turned to the man beside her and said, he got away quite quickly. And the man beside her looked confused. He had no idea what she was talking about. She explained to him that she was referring to the person that had just shoved her, and that only seconds ago he asked her if she was alright. The man had no recollection of asking her this or seeing her being shoved. Either she stepped into another parallel universe or something's gone wrong with her mentally. Hopefully it was a parallel universe slip. In our number 8 spot, we have the energy loop. This thread had me buzzing, as some of the ideas presented truly can make you feel like a kid again, looking up into the stars and wondering, what the heck is life? What is it? There is a thread where someone goes into a concept called eternal returns. A user stated, quote, the concept of eternal returns states that the entire universe as its whole will repeat and loop itself forever in the exact same identical way forever. From its start to its end, history literally repeats itself from the Big Bang to the universe's final collapse. The concept is apparently from Indian philosophy and can also be thought about in ancient Egypt, and eventually it was adapted by the Pythagoreans and the Stoics. The idea that the universe repeats itself would perhaps mean that then there are no parallel universes, but honestly, it's very confusing and I'm unsure. It's definitely something I'm going to have to mull over as I drink my evening tea tonight. In our number 7 spot, we have infinite realities. Another thread went deeper into the concept of infinite realities, and one user in particular had me thinking that it's very possible that parallel universes exist if this were to be true. He said, we are all the same consciousness split into infinite independent pieces, experiencing every infinite slice of reality independently as every living thing in every dimension at the same time. When you screw someone over or wrong someone, you are actually going to have to experience the other side of it as well. Every killer has had to live the life of his victim, etc. Because we are all the same consciousness ultimately. Damn, I love this take on karma, as if it's just inevitable as opposed to a punishment. This definitely aligns with the concept also of yin and yang and makes the most sense to me. In our number 6 spot, we have the glass of water. There is a Reddit thread where a guy explains that he is very particular about his mornings. He does the same thing. He gets up, grabs a glass and fills it with water, and then pours some cereal and watches Netflix in bed. He definitely gives me Sheldon vibes from The Big Bang Theory. I bet you he has a seat that no one's allowed to sit in, and I bet you no one can touch his food either, otherwise he won't eat it. On second thought, that's probably a good practice to have, as we just got over a pandemic. Anyways, this was a regular morning. He had a sip of his water, put it on his nightstand, and started eating his breakfast in bed while watching Netflix. Anyways, he was eating away when he got thirsty and went to have a sip of water when his cup was gone. He was very confused as he got up and went to the kitchen and found his cup in the cupboard. He believed that he slipped into another dimension where grabbing water in the morning isn't a part of his routine, and a lot of people seem to be here for it. Do you think he slipped into another dimension? Let us know in the comment section below. In our number 5 spot, we have the John Titor thread. Alright, if you clicked on this video, then I'm sure at this point you have heard all about John Titor. John Titor is a supposed time traveler from the year 2036 that came to the early 2000s for personal reasons, he said, and engaged in a blog thread online. People have debated his authenticity for many moons now, with some predictions that seemingly have come true and some that did not. But one Reddit user commented something notable that I wanted to share. He said, please keep an open mind. John Titor stated that traveling through time doesn't mean traveling
linearly. But to travel, you must switch into another universe in which the time was set either in the past or future. John also mentioned that he could have already changed up the timeline just by being there, and things would change either way. That would definitely explain a couple of the wars that he said would happen that haven't yet, like the Civil War of 2015. There definitely has been civil unrest and distrust in society so much recently that I wouldn't be surprised if that was a part of our timeline very soon, but you know, maybe just a little delayed. Hopefully not, you never know. In our number 4 spot, we have the Macarena. Yes, the Macarena, that infamous 90s dance that almost everyone in the world knows that was born pre-2000. I can't speak for anyone after that. They have so many TikTok dances in their head that they may not have room for this one. A Reddit thread unveiled a very peculiar thing. Apparently, if you view the original music video for the Macarena, you would see that a few dance moves are missing and were never there. The thread went deep into where the heck did these extra moves come from if they were never there? How did literally everyone from around the world learn some extra moves if the music video did not showcase them? This one is super freaky to me as I play back all the times I have done the Macarena at weddings and school dances and parties, and it was always done with the extra arm movements. Where did they come from? Probably another universe. In our number 3 spot, we have the sweater. This Reddit user spoke about how she was getting ready one morning and grabbed her favorite blue sweater and put it on her dining room chair as she was grabbing a few of her things to take her dog for a walk. She went back to the chair to grab her sweater when it was gone. She felt, confused. She just had it and put it on her chair. Where is it? She walked around the house trying to find it. She went to the laundry room to see if she accidentally threw it in the laundry. Nothing. She went to the washroom, the living room, she walked back into her room, and nothing. The sweater was not there. She went to all of the rooms 2 more times and still nothing. The sweater just disappeared. She's convinced that it got sucked into another dimension or experienced a time slip. And honestly, I don't blame her. Either that or some ghosts are playing a trick on her. In our number 2 spot, we have the dimension thread. Okay, not going to lie, this thread, really pulled me in. I had to read it slowly because the ideas presented in it are so hard to grasp, as they are just not our current reality, and it takes a minute to really understand the concept of there being other dimensions, bigger than that. But what is explained is that there are in fact 10 dimensions in total, and each one gets more trippier to understand. But through Googling this and learning about all 10 of the possible dimensions, you may see how it makes sense that parallel universes exist. One commenter said, "I am starting to believe time really is an illusion and our past, present, and future exist at the same time, but we only experience it linearly. So it's like we can only be on one place on the timeline at any given moment, even though the rest exists elsewhere." Another reader commented, "That's called experiencing this reality from a 3rd-dimensional perspective." Yeah, this convo definitely had me confused, but it sounds like it could make sense for our realities to exist at the same time. I definitely need to think this one through more, but very interesting. In our number 1 spot, we have the man from Torrid. Of course, there are so many threads about the infamous man from Torrid. There are also more people that have apparently popped up out of nowhere in this world, but the man from Torrid is the most popular story and, my personal favorite. If you haven't heard this story before, essentially one day a man was traveling to Japan in July of 1954, and when he was going through customs in the Tokyo airport, the security wouldn't let him through as he had a passport from a country that did not exist. The man insisted that the country did exist and that it was called Torrid, and it had existed for thousands of years. He pointed to the map where a country called Andorra exists now, and insisted that his country is called Torrid, but it is in the place where Andorra lies now. He was detained for a night in a hotel while the police investigated this case, but when they arrived the next day to the man's hotel room, the man was gone. He had completely vanished. Some say he went through a time slip, and some say that is probably just an old urban legend, but as there are many stories like this that have popped up over the last while, a lot of people believe this story to be evidence of a parallel dimension.
Starting off this countdown, we have the face suit. So this video was uploaded and created by Reddit user Nude Robot Baby. The whole thing just makes me want to bleach my eyes out. Like, it makes me feel so uncomfortable. So according to this user, they were wearing a custom motion capture suit while dancing. And then, for some reason, he thought it would be a good idea to make himself a face suit to wear. And this was the final outcome. I don't know why he thought this was a good idea or like what the meaning behind this is, but it's surely creepy. When someone asked him why he did this, he replied with, "To appease the face lords." So, there's that. Moving on to number 9, we have the lost episode. And if you guys are liking this video so far, make sure to give it a big thumbs up because it really helps us out and I appreciate it. So, thank you. Now, I'm glad that this isn't a real Teletubbies episode because that is absolutely horrifying. Like, what is up with that giant man baby creature? But that's not all. This weird abstract video gets worse. Literally, this could be made into a horror movie. Like the Teletubbies come out of your screen and try and hunt you down or something. There's absolutely no explanation for this video. It was just posted by some guy in the Reddit forum Cursed. We don't know who made it or why. In our 8th spot, we have the haunted cupboard. So this video was posted into the Cursed subreddit by I Like Cake and Music. Well, me too. I unfortunately don't know where the original video is from, but it's from some TikTok video. Honestly, if I was home alone and saw that thing peering out of my cupboard, I think I would die. Like, that's absolutely horrifying and puts a new meaning on the word serial killer. Get it? Seriously, that is a cursed box of cereal. Also, what brand of cereal is that? Like, I've never seen such an evil face on a cereal box before. It's definitely not Honey Nut Cheerios or Raisin Bran, that's for sure. Moving on to number 7, we have the fish. Who here is a fan of fish? Maybe you like salmon or tuna or sushi. Well, this next woman loves fish, especially raw fish.
Mal gucken, ob ich das genauso kann wie die Robben. Keine Chance.
Okay, I'm sorry, that is too much for me. Not only would that be incredibly stinky, but that can't taste good at all. I'm just glad that she didn't chomp down on it. But still, why did she just put that whole thing in her mouth like that? What's she trying to prove? If she's trying to sell that fish, then she needs to be fired because that is not a good sales pitch at all. That poor fish. I just have so many questions. Coming in at number 6, we have the cursed pig. You know it's time to get off the internet when you come across a video like this. So this man's name is Johnny Ridlin, and he actually became famous on TikTok for posting weird videos just like this one. He now has 2.6 million followers on TikTok. So he literally gets paid to post weird stuff like this. I mean, personally, that's not my cup of tea, but if you like that stuff, then I guess check out his page. I'm just curious to know how this all started. Like, did he just wake up one day and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get dressed up like a pig and chat out on some beans? Like, who thinks like that? I mean, it worked. The video went viral and he's got a big following now. Maybe I gotta start doing stuff like that. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the cursed home. So this video was shared in the cursed subreddit by a user named Teriak01. There's no description. The video is just titled The Cursed Home. So the video starts off with a creepy shot of some old stairs. In the background, we can hear muffled screaming. From there, something unexplainable happens. I literally can't describe it at all, so just take a look. I genuinely think that that video is cursed, and I'm getting bad vibes here, folks. Bad vibes. In our 4th spot, we have the hot dog ambassador. This is another video that I definitely need someone to explain. So this video was posted by Reddit user Hot Dog Ambassador. It appears to be someone in a hot dog outfit huddled in a corner while the cha-cha slide plays backwards. I mean, when the song is played normally, it's so fun and upbeat, you know, like right foot, let's stop. Left foot, hands on your knees, you get it. But it's just so unsettling played backwards. The video gets weirder when this person begins to freak out. I just hope that this mystery hot dog person is okay and not being held captive. Again, like most of these videos, I don't know what on earth is going on, but I'm definitely not here for it. I should also note that this goes on for a full 3 minutes. And at number 3, we have the cursed mom. If you ever thought your mom was annoying or strict, imagine having this woman as your mother. So again, there's no explanation for this video. It was just titled Cursed Mom, and it seriously creeps me out. There's just this weird old alien looking lady doing weird things in front of the camera. Sometimes it cuts to black, other times it cuts to static. That woman's face alone is nightmare fuel. You're lying to yourself if that video didn't freak you out. In our 2nd spot, we have the cursed Krabby Patty. Let me start off by apologizing for what I'm about to show you.
Hey Patrick, eat me. Eat me.
Yeah, just let that all sink in. I can never look at SpongeBob the same ever again. But it gets worse. After Patrick eats SpongeBob, we see him traveling through his intestines.
Where am I? I must be in Patrick's intestines. How am I gonna get out of here?
You get the picture as to how he escaped. It's pretty disturbing. But again, that's not all. The video ends with Demon SpongeBob feasting on some bread and wine. This video actually makes my head hurt. And in our number 1 spot, we have the cursed ice cream.
There's good reason for my glistening skin, and how I shine, and how my pores are so clean and clear.
Now what you saw was actually a clip from an actual TV commercial. Yeah, they aired that. It's an advertisement for Little Baby's ice cream.
And nod, and hug, and high-five each other with great enthusiasm. This is a special time. Little Baby's ice cream. Ice cream is a feeling.
Apparently the company's goal was to have a very bizarre and unsettling commercial. And it worked because this ad went viral online. So they got a lot of promotion. Sadly, in November of 2019, Little Baby's permanently closed. All we have left is their super creepy advertisement.
I eat Little Baby's ice cream. It keeps me young. It keeps me light on my feet. I spring from activity to activity. I love my job. I love my life.
I have no clue how that actor did that. There's no way I would do something like that. Number 1, I wouldn't be able to keep a straight face. Number 2, I don't want to be covered in marshmallow fluff. No thank you. Number 3, it's just weird and disturbing.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have 2060. This is a Reddit response that came from a user called Pity Pity Bum. And they were responding to a question posted that asked, quote, what are your guys' predictions for the future of the world in the 2060s to 2070s? This user decided to share their opinion and say, quote, it will be pretty much the same but with climatic crisis, water problem, AI problems, unemployment problems, and energy problems. To solve all of these global problems, we will have probably something like strong world government, EU but in world scale. Big corporations' problem will be solved by this time, I hope. Alright, there's definitely a lot going on there, a lot of crisis happening. Some of those latter predictions aren't totally terrible, but it's definitely quite a jump from where we're at now. I guess like anything on this list, only time will tell. In our number 9 spot today, we have the grim future. So this is a response or prediction from a user named Bob Quasit. Bob's got a lot of ideas about where we're headed in the next 50 years or so, but to start off with, he claims that, quote, humanity is well on the way to extinction by the 2060s. Alright Bob, hot start, things are looking grim. He goes on to say that, quote, Western countries, in particular the United States, are well along in the process of losing basic infrastructure. Electricity, clean water, and internet access are only intermittently available at best for all but the areas designated by the US military as, quote, smart cities. While many people anticipate our world only getting more technological, it seems like Bob has the opposite in mind. He definitely envisions a more apocalyptic feel for the next 50 years, it seems. In our number 8 spot today, we have colonies. So Bob, from before, had so many predictions in one Reddit post that we had to break it down into 2 points. Near the end of his few paragraph prediction, he wrote about how he believes that pandemics will continue to sweep through our world in the coming years, and this, coupled with, quote, increasingly violent weather on a scale currently unimaginable, deaths in the billions occur. Alright, well, I'm glad Bob seems like a glass half full kind of guy. He goes on to say, quote, some of the elite may or may not have attempted to escape to orbital habitats or colonies on the moon or Mars. These attempts are not successful. Even if colonies are successfully established, they lack sufficient biodiversity and technological skill to survive more than a few decades at most. The same issue applies to underground bunkers. The elite believe that they are technologically capable of self-preservation and do not require a living planet to survive, but they are incorrect. They end up devouring each other in the dark underground. The human race becomes extinct within 100 to 200 years from this point. Listen, can someone check up on Bob to see how he's doing? Because I'm feeling a little worried after that prediction. There are some definitely interesting points in here that you may or may not agree with, but anything is possible when it comes to the future. In our number 7 spot today, we have 3 outcomes. For Reddit user Sonic the Sith, they see 3 potential futures that they think will occur by 2060. They wrote, 1. We have nuked the planet and no human life exists anymore. 2. Some religious cult took power in the US and the world is close to being destroyed by them. 3. We are on the way to fulfill the prophecy depicted in the movie Idiocracy, with some smart people escaping to the moon and Mars. It definitely seems to be a theme that people think we are going to be moving off planet, or at least attempting to within some of our lifetimes, but it's quite interesting that many of these predictions don't involve everyone. Of course, space exploration is something that is getting more attention now than ever, with more private companies helping to expand our knowledge of the universe. James Webb is out there showing us the furthest views we've ever had, so maybe these predictions are more accurate than we even know. In our number 6 spot today, we have insane times. This Reddit post comes from someone who has since deleted their account, but they originally posted it to the Futurology thread and they wanted to start a discussion. Their headline reads, quote, the next 40 to 50 years will be insanity. They then go on to pose the question, quote, does anybody else feel this way? Think about the major issues we're facing: climate change, unprecedented growth in technology, worsening wealth inequality, global authoritarian resurgence, plastic pollution, etc. They go on to explain their thoughts a bit more, saying, quote, I know we live in the most prosperous and peaceful time in human history, but doesn't it seem that we are trending toward a future that we are wildly unprepared for? A future of unprecedented change and turbulence. I'm not saying it will be the end of the world or that we are all doomed, but it certainly seems that we are entering an era era that will be unlike anything humanity has ever experienced. It's definitely quite an interesting question, and by the edits added afterwards, it seems to have been one that they got a lot of responses to. They conclude their last edit by saying, quote, "A lot of people seem to think that we will survive the next 50 years just because we've survived every turbulent period of change so far. To this I say two things. One, past performance does not guarantee future returns, and two, the challenges we face are not necessarily insurmountable, but they will be extremely difficult to overcome and maintain our civilization, but I think we can do it." Hey, at least someone on this list has a positive, although not ideal, outlook for the future. In our number 5 spot today we have AI growth. So rather than one specific prediction, this is just like a common one that I saw on a ton of Reddit threads that I looked at, and it has to do with AI. It appears that many people believe AI is only going to continue getting better, more realistic, and more helpful, but people also believe that this is going to lead to a much higher unemployment rate. People believe that in the near future, AI technology is going to begin taking over even more jobs than what we've seen in the past. As an example, self-driving cars. It is said that this new piece of technology will soon put 5 million Americans out of jobs. That's a lot. I mean, if taxi companies or Uber can somehow find a way to remove the middleman, you know they would in order to rake in more cash for themselves. This issue isn't just with this, however. It is said that by 2030, nearly 70 million people could lose their jobs due to automation. Is it efficient? Yes. Is it potentially very harmful? Also yes. In our number 4 spot today we have the 10-year prediction. This prediction comes from the Reddit user Kanta Bane, and they had some thoughts about the next 10 years because, by their own words, quote, "If history taught us anything, is that predictions of the future more than that are usually not accurate at all." They do start off with some positive predictions that includes renewable energy sources, medical and technological advancements, space tourism, you know, some cool, good things, but then they get into the bad. They predict things like, quote, "Ads are much more intrusive and annoying, everyone is trying to sell you a suit you don't need, nothing can be trusted, people spread fake news and call the truth fake news, the government is either evil and or dumb and brainwash dumb people like they do now, but it's much worse, dumb people still keep electing dumb people, democracy starts sounding like a joke, privacy is a joke, VPNs are lobbied out and now banned in most countries." That's a lot. There's a lot going on there. Well, these are definitely some darker predictions. They aren't completely out there and wild. Some of these are clearly made with a negative impression of what our current world is like, but some might just call that being realistic. In our number 3 spot today we have negative finances. Carrying on from Cantabane's predictions, they also had some negative financial predictions for the next 10 years as well. They wrote, quote, "A recession hits, home and education loan taken during the time for the same amount of education and space today will probably take a person to repay till they turn 70 on average. The gap between the rich and poor widen." They then finish on some environmental predictions, saying, quote, "Global warming has still caused a lot of biodiversity to fade away, the summers are hotter and the winters still the same, some island somewhere will sink. I mean, a lot of bad things happening now will probably happen again, but worse, just like it has been happening from the past. I mean, it's safe to say that if we continue on the path we're on right now, some of those financial predictions might be pretty accurate. As far as the environmental ones, there are a ton of talk among experts that suggests many islands are nearing the point of being submerged in water, but it doesn't just stop at islands either. Some coastal cities might be at risk within the next 50 years as well." In our number 2 spot today we have the future timeline. On a lot of Reddit threads, one thing I saw being posted a lot was one website that people wanted to share. The website was futuretimeline.net, and when I clicked on it, it brought me to a site that doesn't just have predictions for the next 50 or 100 years. No, this website has predictions for the next million. This entire website is quite the trip, and it doesn't just include predictions for humans and humanity, but also for space, our galaxy, and our universe. In the 22nd century, they predict things like space colonization, AI becoming sentient, and quantum physics has incredible breakthroughs, giving us insight into fields we didn't even know existed previously. Predictions for 1 million AD include things like continents colliding, Saturn's rings fading away, the Oort cloud being disturbed, basically just a totally different world and environment, but that makes a lot of sense. It's a pretty interesting website that has so much information on it and some pretty crazy predictions of the future. In our number 1 spot today we have space travel. This post comes from a user who goes by Ignolin, and the heading reads, quote, "How I predict predict the future will look 2020 to 2045. Obviously, this prediction was made before 2020, so we are currently living in the midst of the time this person was predicting, which is kinda cool. The part of their prediction I really wanted to talk about is in reference to space exploration though. They wrote, quote, "The solar system is entirely inhabited but mostly by robots. Because minds are now digital, we can travel simply through light-speed data transmission into a computer or robotic body on another world. At this point we are a hive mind and can have the sensory input from any other connected mind streamed to our own brains. Our species as a whole becomes self-aware. Interstellar travel is possible through one of two methods. If faster than light travel is possible, we may use wormholes or the warping of space-time to travel to distant suns. If not, nanoscale craft can be accelerated to the speed of light with little energy. Once at their distant destination, they begin using the materials available to replicate themselves and form the necessary technological apparatuses for minds to be transferred." I'm sorry, what? That is absolutely insane, but apparently this person is not the only one who thinks that this is where our future is heading, so I have to ask, who else sees this sort of thing coming true?